Big story out of college football. The Pac-12 is the second conference to have a conference-only schedule. This comes one day after the Big 12 announced it would play a conference-only schedule. The Big 10. Coronavirus spreading significantly in all 6 states with Pac-12 member schools. Some of the games that have been canceled because of this, some notable ones. USC was set to play Alabama September 5th at AT&T Stadium, Jerry's World. And, of course, Stanford, Notre Dame. That has also been canceled October 10th. Again, the Pac-12 second conference to have a conference-only schedule as we cover the breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. And for more, let's welcome in CBS Sports senior college football reporter Dennis Dodd and CBS Sports college football analyst Barrett Sallee. Dennis, no surprise here with the Pac-12 following in the footsteps of the Big 10. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, no surprise here. The presidents went into executive session this afternoon and really stayed on after they'd been briefed by the ADs for about an hour and a half, and came up with what looked like, as of yesterday, a conclusion that we're now talking about. There are some adjustments here. I was told by a source just now, got off the phone, they may not stop at 9 games. In other words, they may play a conference game or two into that schedule. They're going to have to determine that. It isn't necessarily set at 9 games. And I think the other development is they're going to try to move some of the games later in the season, or at least exploring playing as many games as possible in September to get out of the way of the flu season. That seems to make sense. That wasn't really mentioned in the Big 10 initiative on yesterday, but this makes a lot of sense because the Pac-12 is the most far-flung conference, at least among the Power 5 in the country. The other thing here, Hakeem, this now involves all 10 conferences. You mentioned the SEC. Now the SEC is touched by this. They've got at least 2 games involved with Pac-12 teams, obviously Alabama, USC, and then Texas A&M, Colorado. So this takes games away from the SEC for those wondering if the SEC could go off on its own and play a 12-game schedule. It can't.
Yeah, I think this certainly complicates things. Like Dennis said, the SEC is now touched. They have a meeting, obviously, on Monday, which was regularly scheduled. It's not like it's an emergency meeting. This was all part of the plan. But what the Big 10 and now the Pac-12 have done is basically forced everybody's hand and say, all right, look, you're either with us or you've got to be ultra creative with how you formulate your season. That means potential partnerships between 3 conferences or whatever. It really does put pressure on the other conferences to really start making decisions. And that's why, talking around to people in the SEC and ACC today, coaches and administrators, all of them were caught off guard by the Big Ten's decision. Obviously, they're not caught off guard by the Pac-12 decision now, but I think there was this idea that there was going to be some sort of consensus and at least line of communication open between everybody, and that just doesn't exist now. So now it definitely leaves the Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC scrambling.
Dennis, how confident are you that they can even pull off a conference-only schedule, considering right now the pandemic, the coronavirus spreading significantly in the 6 states where the 12-member schools of the Pac-12 live?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question. Can they even get a season in? It's trending towards next spring. I mean, to be frank, and I think a lot of people, talking to people today and yesterday, Barrett mentioned he had talked to people as well. I think the trend here is everybody wants to play in the fall, but this is the next step before you have to play in the spring because of what you mentioned, the record spikes. I think I heard today Arizona had the most cases in the world right now, one state in the United States. So that doesn't look good at all. So if they can just do this, then, that makes the transition to spring, I guess, a little easier. But yeah, it's definitely headed that way, definitely trending that way, that they may have to move the whole thing to the spring.
Barrett, do you see that? Do you see a situation where we're going to have spring football, no college football in the fall?
Absolutely not. It's an idea right now, but implementation and logistics just absolutely make that impossible. And there are a lot of different reasons. One, you would have no seniors that have any NFL aspirations playing. You'd have no juniors or draft eligible sophomores playing. Say bye-bye to Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. They will not be there as well. You would basically be doing this. It would 100% be a cash grab, and everybody would know that. Players already know that now about this season in the fall potentially. You've seen seen an Arizona player tweet something about that, and then a bunch of other players from around the country agreed. So what would happen if you were using these players as a clear cash grab? They would band together. They would boycott. It would not happen. And I've talked to a lot of coaches about this, and they are vehemently against 2 seasons in a 9-month span. And that's essentially what you would be asking them to do. And then all of that isn't even considering the fact that this is a virus, and viruses typically flare up in the winter. So the idea that you could play in spring, yeah, it's a nice idea. Logistically, it's impossible to implement.
There's one note to pass along. Pac-12 student athletes who choose not to participate this coming year because of safety concerns will continue to have their scholarships honored by their university and remain in good standing. So at least that the universities and the conference taking a step there. When you take a look at the impact here, and we discussed this on Thursday, Dennis, and we discussed this as well with you, Barrett, in the earlier day, in the day on CBS Sports HQ, the impact this has on a school like Notre Dame. Because now Notre Dame losing 3 games. They had 2 games scheduled against the Pac-12. Of course, they had Stanford, and then they had a game against USC. Dennis, how does that now impact Notre Dame losing 3 games from its schedule?
Well, Notre Dame was always going to be taken care of because of the mere fact that they play 6 ACC games. I know of a bunch of MAC teams right now that could use a game if they have to cobble together a schedule. But if college football goes forward, if the ACC goes forward, obviously, with something like this, Notre Dame will be part of that mix. They will not be excluded. I talked to their athletic director, Jack Swarbrick, months ago about that fact, and he reminded me the added advantage is they're playing those 6 ACC games this year. Every other year they play 5. They alternate 5 and 6. They got 6 this year, including that huge one against Clemson, which now ranks as maybe the game of the year, one of the games of the year right now with all these games we've lost. So I guess the short answer in that is Notre Dame will be taken care of. They'll be part of the mix. They will have a schedule to go forward.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because Dennis referenced the Notre Dame-Clemson game. Just think about the ACC now, because let's just assume Notre Dame's going to be a part of it, which, like Dennis said, is probably going to happen. Then suddenly you have Clemson and Notre Dame in a conference championship race, which is just going to be fascinating to me because you look at what Notre Dame's been the last 5 years. Aside from the 2016 season when they went 4-8, they're consistently a 10-win team, around a 10-win team. So, and obviously they went to the playoffs. So the fact that you've got Notre Dame and Clemson potentially in the same conference with an upstart Louisville team, Mack Brown in North Carolina, and a Miami team that I think is going to be pretty darn salty, suddenly the ACC looks like it might be pretty good.
We are 50 days away from the scheduled start to the college football season. I say scheduled start, August 29th, week 0. And I hope the answer that I hear is the one that I want to hear as a fan from their perspective. Barrett, we're going to have a season, right? I shouldn't be sitting here shaking, or at this point, who knows what's going to happen?
Hakeem, I've been pretty optimistic about all of this. I've been a pretty optimistic guy by nature. Monday morning, I kind of opened up my computer and I got kind of pessimistic. I just got that feeling that things were going to go haywire. And so, yeah, I do think there will be a season. I think if it's a 9-game conference slate that starts in October, then so be it. But I do think there's going to be a season. I know the conferences that are still contemplating changing their scheduling format really want to do a 12-game conference-only schedule if it is indeed going to be a conference-only schedule. So I do think there will be college football. The closer we get in all of this madness that's gone on this week, it makes me think that it's going to be delayed, and the idea that we have week 0 or week 1 games on September 5th, that is rapidly disappearing.
I went into this week saying I thought there was a less than a 50% chance the season would start on time. I think that's a pretty good bet right now. I mean, they can put games on September 5th if they want, but it's kind of meaningless right now if you're only playing 9 games. The season has been truncated. I'm willing to say there's less than a 50% chance they play this season because there's a huge hurdle they have to get over in August when these students come to campus, 40,000 students coming to campus. They're going to have to go through their own testing protocol that the players and the programs and coaches right now are just kind of getting over. You saw that Michigan today announced that 514 tests between staff and athletes, 4 positives. And maybe they're getting through this. Same at Clemson. You see 8 programs having to pause. What are these universities going to look like? And what are going to be the optics when hundreds and thousands of positives show up for these schools that test, for these students coming on campus? That's going to be a huge hurdle to get over. Remember when we were talking about no students on campus, no football? Haven't heard much of that lately. In fact, USC is going all online. Last I heard, or we just heard today, they're playing conference games only. So I don't know if they can get through August. The optics, how they look on that. The testing isn't there. The uniform testing isn't there. The frequency isn't there. I think MLB seems completely safe testing every other day because they can afford it. The colleges don't even know if they're going to test once a week, twice a week, or the frequency. Wouldn't you like to know Friday night who's available or Saturday morning? The Power 5 is in the process of doing that. I talked to a source today. Again, they're saying we got time to figure that out. I don't think they have that much time. Less than 50% chance we play now in the fall.
All right, we shall see. Great information there from Dennis Dodd and Barrett Sallee as the Pac-12 announcing it will play a conference-only schedule following in the footsteps of the Big Ten. Thank you, men. And here's a statement from the Pac-12. The Pac-12 Commissioner Larry Scott saying, quote, "Our decisions have and will be guided by science and data, and based upon trends and indicators over the past days, it has become clear that we need to provide ourselves with maximum flexibility to schedule and delay any movement to the next phase of return to play activities," end quote.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.